Don't create encounters, create a world. Welcome to my channel. I focus on tabletop role-playing games, video games, and science fiction. I'm going to reveal one of the secrets that were in the World of Tiglath campaign that have run in the past and plan on running in the future. The party had a lot of hints about this, but they never did figure it out. What happened was, as they started adventuring, they were run into an area where you're far inland, but you're having a lot of pearls. And in fact, for a period of time, they could buy pearls very cheaply, and they could then transport them elsewhere and sell them at the normal sales price. But pearls were dirt cheap. And the other thing that was common was you'd go into all the taverns and various things, and there was goblin ale. And the question was, where did the pearls come from and where did the ale come from? Well, the ale came from the goblins, and the goblins bought things with pearls. And the things that the goblins bought were excrement and sheep. They wanted sheep, but they wanted the excrement from the sheep even more than the sheep. And actually, one of the adventures where they were going along with someone heading off to the goblin caverns, and they were to guard them because people would rob caravans, but the caravan was taking a load of excrement, as it's called, a honey wagon, toward there, which was a smelly job. But the party didn't actually; they were just provided guards to the goblin den. But where did that come from? Well, that was the secret, was that they had some hints about, but they never got into that. The goblins also sold under the shall we say, under the counter, a product called Tharl. Tharl was a creation of World of Tiglath. Tharl was a drug. It was an herbal mixture that had its primary benefit was it produced water breathing. You could breathe underwater for a period of time. But the secondary thing was it was narcotic and it was addictive. So it was sold among humans and such as an addictive substance under the counter, as we say. But where did all this come from? Where did the goblins get the ale, and where did the goblins get the Tharl? And the goblins did also buy grain, but not as much as they wanted the sheep and the excrement. What happens was the goblins were the middlemen between the Shawagin, if I pronounce that correctly. I'm terrible at pronouncing that name. Shawagin. The Shawagin wanted Tharl because Tharl was a perfect drug for them, for their captives. The Shawagin would capture humans and dwarves and elves and something as they raided, but bringing them back to their underwater lair, they would drown. But giving them Tharl let them breathe underwater. It also had the interesting side effect that doped them up and made them very docile captives. And so then the Shawagin could ransom those off. And the Shawagin produced oysters. That was one of their food sources. And the way they produced that was that they would take excrement and seed the beds of oysters so that they would grow, because oysters live on their filter feeders. They filled on that, so they would dump the excrement. And they ate some of the sheep, but the sheep was not as important as the excrement for the pearls, for the oysters, which they grew and harvested and sold. The seaweed, they harvested seaweed, which is one of the components in Tharl, along with some of the malt. I would work this out. It says the goblins would buy some grain. They would malt it, which is causing it to sprout, which they used in their production of ale. As a side effect, the remains of that were then a major component in Tharl, all mixed with the seaweed that the Shawagin provided. So then the goblins sold that back to the Shawagin. So you actually had the goblins acting as middlemen. You had this capitalistic society. Goblins were they were trading off pearls. They were selling ale and tharl to the humans, or elves and dwarves. And then they were they were buying excrement, sheep, and grain, and selling the excrement and sheep to the Schwagen. They were using the grain to produce the ale, and they were also using indirectly to produce the tharl, which they sold to the Schwagen. So you had the goblins were making money from both the humans and the Schwagen, and it was a beneficial trade agreement. Well, arguably the Schwagen are not the nicest folk, shall we say. They capture people and keep them prisoner and do various things to them. So that was the way the world worked. Now, what that meant was the encounters came for free. You would find a caravan transporting sheep. You could be hired for that, and then you would have people attacking. You would have robbers attacking the caravan because they were interested in getting not the excrement or the sheep, but getting the pearls, so that they could sell them anything, because that was also a form of economy. So you have a normal criminal element in there, but you didn't need to create this entire complex situation, because now you've got trade routes that are going on, and you've got the Schwagen raiding out on the ocean. And the question was how did the goblins and the Schwagens meet? Well, the goblins were expanding their caverns, and they got down to a layer that actually, it was an underground river that fed all the way to the sea. So they ended up with an opening down into the underground caverns were filled with water, which went all the way to the sea, and the Schwagen started trading with the goblins, and all this was behind the scenes, underground. No one saw it except the Schwagen and the goblins, and it was the perfect trading environment, because the Schwagens could come up in the dark and talk with the goblins and do the trade. And that's how that would come about. That also meant that the Schwagen could sell captives that they had captured to the goblins, who could then ransom. Again, that was always under the table. Nobody saw what was going on, and nobody knew how the goblins got these people. And the captives were so doped up on tharl that they would hardly remembered anything, because they also became very addictive. It's an addictive substance. So that was, you sell your captive back, and they have to keep selling them tharl until they managed to get off of it, if they ever did. It was a very addictive substance. There was one in Savannah, I think was her name, was as an NPC. They went around with a party for a long time, and they rescued her from actually the goblins, and because she was locked up and she was addicted to tharl, and she didn't remember much about how she'd got there, but she'd got there from the Schwagens who had attacked the ship. So all of this fits together to create a variety of encounters. Now you know why the Schwagen are there, because they're trading. They're dealing, they're merchants of a sort, shall we say, somewhat nefarious, but they do deal with, they purchase tharl, they use tharl on their captives, they capture people, they sell them, but they also are industrious in that they have oyster beds that they grow and harvest. And the pearls are sort of a side effect. The Schwagen eat some of the oysters, but they also sell a lot of oysters, and that's why the goblins ended up with all these oyster shells, because it was just the sort of the outgrowth of the trade over a period of time. But it allowed creation of an entire economy that handled explanation of why certain encounters were there. And what happens is that you ran into a mystery. Why are all these pearls? Where did tharl come from? Where did goblin ale come from? And you sort of question what was in the goblin ale and so on. And the goblin ale had some of the seaweed was also mixed in with the growth with that. So which was also in Tharl, but it wasn't as goblin ale wasn't addictive like Tharl was. But this created an entire economy that was explainable. It wasn't, oh, and I hear these discussions, like Tabletop Terrors talked about creating, these adventures, and you have to have a theme and a mood, and I'm going, you're railroading. That's just railroading. If you create an encounter that the party has to run into, to me, that's railroading. You're building, and it's no different than creating a module, I guess. A lot of people like that. I don't. I prefer to let players decide what to do. But if you present a world that has mysteries, then the players, if they're intrigued enough, if you make it intriguing enough, and I'm not always succeeded, and I admit that I didn't succeed. The players were not intrigued enough to go investigating where Goblin Ale came from or where the pearls came from. It was a mystery that they could have investigated and could have found out, but there were other things that they were looking at and they got distracted. But that goes back into the way I handle gaming in general. I like to present a world and let the players do whatever they want to do. That's one of the key questions is, what do you want to do? You ask the players, what's your next step? Where are you going to go? What do you want to do? And if you create a world with lots of mysteries that the players don't know, but if it's interesting enough, they'll go try and figure it out or find out or ask about it. So keep adding mystery and excitement, and then the encounters come for free. Because if they head off in some way, and that's one of your trade routes, then you just have to decide whether they encounter one of the, that they're coming back or whatever. Why would they run into Schwagen here, and how do the Schwagen survive so far inland or whatever? Now you can justify all of this because it fits with your world. So my argument is, don't create encounters. Create a world. I'd like to hear your comments about this. Do you prefer to just create canned encounters that the party runs into? Or do you create a world that has interesting and unusual things that should pique the interest of your players? Thank you for watching my video. I look forward to learning what you think about this video. Let me know in the comments below. I appreciate all your comments. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, give me a thumbs down. I appreciate both forms of feedback. If you're new here and would like to subscribe, you can click on the icon on the left. If you're interested, there's more content on the right.